We we tend to have somewhere around 225, 250 CrossFit members, and then somewhere around 150 or so nutrition clients as well. I have 7 employees. And what was the other question?
No,
That's it.
My last question too, this is something I always ask when I'm in a discussion with an owner. Have you worked with a mentor?
Yes, actually, my first mentor was Ryan Cage, who's on here. His video is not on here anymore, but Ryan Cage was my first mentor. And then I worked with Mad Lab for a little over a year, and that was my a big shift in where we changed things here that we'll be talking about more.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for being on. Tucker.
Yeah, thanks. Good afternoon. Tucker Jones. I opened Ballston CrossFit back in 2012. So we're coming up on our 12-year anniversary here in a couple months. And then 3 years after I opened my first gym, I opened my second gym, CrossFit Route 7, and opened that in 2015. So we're coming up on 9 years, both located in the Northern Virginia area, just outside of Washington, D.C., both in great locations, very urban type neighborhoods, a lot of density around them. So that certainly helped us as a business. At Ballston CrossFit, my first gym, we have over 400 members there. Been, kind of between 400, 450 for the last few years. Danielle asked if we're comfortable sharing revenue. Revenue there is about $85,000 a month right now. And then CrossFit Route 7, my second gym, about half the size, just around 200 members. Monthly revenue just over 40,000. Last month was like 43,000 there. And at the first gym, I have 3 managers plus myself. I'm still involved, more of a mentorship role now, but I coach 2 or 3 classes a week as well. So 3 managers plus myself, and then I have 16 part-time coaches there. We have 2 coaches in a lot of our classes, and we have a pretty huge class schedule as well. At my second gym, we have 1 manager. This is my smaller gym, obviously, 1 manager with 7 part-time coaches. All staff is W-2. You can kind of dig into that. The right way to have your part-time staff is on W-2, in terms of payroll standpoint. And Danielle's final question is regarding working with a mentor. I have not worked with a mentor. I had a business background, and just really kind of back starting in 2012, we were all just kind of figuring things out then. So made a lot of mistakes and learned a whole lot from my mistakes. And fortunately, now we do things a whole lot better.
Thank you. Matt.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matt. If you're in the New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont, a little bit of Massachusetts area, you probably know me. I've been around for a long time. Started my affiliate in my garage 2010 and kind of took off from there. As far as the approximate number of memberships I have about 250 CrossFit members at Ever Proven CrossFit. And then we do probably have about 100 or so personal training, small group, different program clients that come in and do those things. Average monthly revenue is between $65,000 and $70,000 a month. Metrics are really good for us. We have a long length of engagement. Our ARM, if you're not tracking ARM, you should. ARM is average monthly revenue per client. It's just about $300 per month. Staff structure, I've got 7 full-time members. One of them is a GM. Myself, I don't work at the gym full-time. I coach when I feel like it, when I like to, because for me, it's now beyond that level of needing me there. So I've created systems that reward my staff, but also give them the opportunities that they need. So I don't take away from that. I kind of watch and step in where I need to. I do have some part-timers as well. So one of the questions that Danielle asks is, do I pay myself? Yes, I do. However, it's not my primary source of income. So, but I do make a healthy salary, we'll say, from the business. Yeah, I coach a little bit here and there, but I've been around a long time. And just like Tucker said, I've made every mistake in the book. And I've been able to kind of learn from those mistakes. But I did that through mentorship. So I'm pretty proud to be part of Two Brain Business and have really used the lessons learned there and my own personal lessons to grow and make our business sustainable for the long term.
Thank you, Matt. And then I have John from CrossFit Airs.
John Wells, CrossFit Aries, Wilmington, Massachusetts, about 20 minutes north of Boston. Been the affiliate owner for about 3 years now. Bought it when it was a failing business, 30, maybe 40 members at the time, to now 150 members, 1 full-time head coach, 3 part-time. And still pursuing 2024 is going to be a big year. And I started with Best Hour of Their Day as my mentors from day one, before I even owned it. So I've had a mentor the whole time.
Cool. Well, I wanted to kick it off with this question. I get asked this the most. And of course, guys, any questions you have too, we'll get to afterwards. But how do you find your coaches? And in terms of like your hiring process, do you look internally? Do you look outside of your communities? What have you had success with? And I just want to do a round robin. Anything that's specific to that, if you want to put questions again in the chat, I'll be looking at that as well and note. But Hannah, I know you've built up your staff recently and have had a couple new hires.
Yeah, we've done all of ours internally. That's worked most successful for us. I think CrossFit thrives on the community. So that's something the same for us as well. But coming internally for us has worked really, really well. People already know them and accept them well. And so that's what's worked for us and kind of sticking with it.
Do you have a mentorship program, like in terms of your onboarding process? So you identify a member, like what does that look like and what, like that conversation?
Well, thankfully we haven't had to do it in a long time. I've had a pretty stable staff for a while. However, most of mine are military spouses, and so they will all eventually move. But yes, when we have someone come on, we do a mentorship. Most of it starts with me, then moves to the manager, and then they actually do a little portion with each of the coaches.
Okay. Matt, I know we've talked about this and you have a quarterly or a program that I would love for you to speak of and share. So.
Yeah, so I do mostly hire in-house. However, one of the things I've done to be successful in finding coaches that work really well for me is I hold every 6 months or so, I hold a coaches course that is created by me, but also, part of my mentorship program that I've been through taught me pieces of this. So what I do is I hold a 6-week course. Basically, it's an advanced theory course, coaches course. So coaches from other gyms are invited to employ themselves in that, but also people who may have a little bit of an interest in coaching. They'd have to pay for it. So it's literally a course to teach you the fundamentals of being a coach and what it takes and what I'm looking for in a perfect coach for my business. We've developed processes that really lead into creating success in coaches. It goes beyond just being a coach in front of a group. It goes into things about being compassionate. It goes into things about listening to people. It goes into things about just being a good person. And so it's a good screening tool for me, but people that tend to get a lot out of that tend to come to me afterwards and the light bulb goes off and say, wow, these are all things in your gym that you do. And I say, yes. And so a lot of times that's a good place for us to find people that are looking to take that next step, going from athlete to coach, whether it be from my gym or outside of my gym. And anybody who's really worked well in that program, if I have a standout, I might think of them down the line if I have an opening. They'll start as a bench coach and, they do have the opportunity to become a full-time coaching member.
Thank you. Tucker?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Matt follow-up questions on that. Love what you're doing there. Matt, what do you charge for that program and how long does it run? I assume it's a 1 day, couple hours.
Yeah, so it's 1 night a week for 6 to 8 weeks. I've done 6-week versions. I've done 8-week versions of that. I charge $400 for it. It's about an hour to an hour and a half per night, and some of that is classroom, some of it's hands-on. And what we do in that is give them homework. I give them reading materials to take home, and some of it's books. And it's not like books about CrossFit. It's books about like being a good person. It's like How to Win Friends and Influence People is one of the books that we ask you to read. We ask you to read Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. There's another book called The Pumpkin Plan that I have them read. So these aren't like CrossFit books. These are books about, how to conduct yourself as a person, how to be professional. So that's been really helpful for us. And then we'll kind of quiz the next week and then see how people grow. And then we break those people out into breakout groups and they do a project together. That's, basically creating a program or creating a coaching environment, and they coach each other in front of me at the end.
Very cool. Love it. Sounds like a great program. So speaking of bringing people on, most of my part-time coaches, we have found within the gym, members that move really well, typically pretty good athletes, and we already know what their personality is in terms of how well they connect with other members in the community. So that is how we got most of our part-time coaches. But the majority of my managers, I've typically had to recruit for, look further. A lot of my part-time coaches, they all have, pretty high-powered professional jobs that, they love coaching, but they have not, wouldn't necessarily be interested in jumping over to the full-time, manager employment at a CrossFit gym. So most of my managers I've actually found just, through word of mouth or Indeed.com actually used to work pretty well for me. Lately, I haven't had to do a search, fortunately in a while, but the last few times I've used it has not been as successful in terms of connecting with people. And then also Instagram. One of my managers saw an Instagram post we made about hiring, and they joined the team after interviewing there. So, but typically, like my managers, all three of my managers I have at Bolton CrossFit right now, they've all relocated to the DC area. So it's been, pretty significant change in employment for them. They've come, joined us, and gotten connected. My head coach has been with me 6 years here in January. So that is my number one goal right now, is actually retaining my three managers at Bolton CrossFit. That's literally like my number one job right now. Keep these three guys. They're the best group of managers I've had. And so that's where I focus a lot of my efforts and energy, to making sure they're happy and they're challenged, and that I'm investing in them and their growth as managers and giving them more responsibilities, which ultimately helps grow the gym. Then for our part-time coaches, that's why I was so curious about what Matt was doing there. We actually run a monthly development session, coaches development session for our intern coaches. So typically, people reach out to us, show an interest in coaching. We say, hey, before signing up for an L1 or anything along those lines, we're making an investment. Come to one or two of these sessions where they start off just observing, and then they continue their development of learning to teach movements, learn to find faults, correct faults, etc. And it's a really cool environment. It's normally 6 to 8 coaches in there. Normally 1.5 to 2 hours. It's just a really good learning opportunity. One of my coaches, we actually require all of our coaches to come to at least 3 of these a year. Their end of year bonus is tied to it. And I was looking, one of my coaches, he's been to 9 of these. He's a coach has been with me 10 years. And he just, afterwards, I was like, man, Travis, I really appreciate you coming, making the effort on a Saturday. He's got 3 young kids to come out here, 9 months out of the year, 9 Saturdays out of the year, you came out, invested. I really appreciate that. And he's like, absolutely. He's like, I love coming here. He said, every time I come to one of these sessions, I learn something new. And that's what you'll find. Those are ultimately going to be your best coaches, the people who are hungry to learn. They're curious to learn. They want to learn. The people that you're having to pull teeth to get to, continuing education sessions that you're offering like that, they're just not curious about becoming a better coach. And ultimately they'll plateau out with their abilities and their skills. So I do tie, like I said, I tie our end of year bonus, which is a 50% cash bonus and 50% continuing education. So if a coach doesn't make the effort, throughout the year to come to my coach's development sessions, then I'm going to, invest a little bit less in them in terms of their continuing education for that next year. But that same guy, Travis, my coach Travis I was talking about, he's a part-time coach. He probably has most certifications than most head coaches, and he has as many or more than probably most of us on this call. His certs run deep, like 12, 13 certs. So pretty cool when you have part-time coaches, really gaining that depth of education and knowledge in the CrossFit space and the coaching space.
Thank you. And John?
Yeah, all of my hires have been internal. I've tried going external and it just hasn't been the same type of fit, but I've also been with the mentality since the beginning of hiring slow and making sure that, people were a very good fit for the product that we've built. And my ultimate goal since the start of, coming into ownership for the gym is not only support my lifestyle, but support my staff's lifestyle as well. So giving those people an opportunity, not just hiring for the sake of hiring, but hiring the right people that are people. And we can teach them how to coach. And we do an internship/mentorship program that lasts about 3 or 4 months. There's no guarantee that they're going to be a coach, but that kind of gets them in the mindset and allows us to see if they're committed to becoming a coach and putting in the work. And, if we see that that's not the case, then no harm, no foul. We'll split ways. But, good people come out of that when you can show me and my head coach that you're ready to work hard and learn. And that's the type of people that we want on the staff. So since the beginning, again, in no rush to hire a boatload of staff, but instead get the right people behind me on my team to keep pushing the gym forward.
And while we're on this, I see a lot of experienced owners on this call. I've been around Allison and Jason from Odin. Does anyone want to chime in and share just any success they've had with hiring, or whether it's going from, a part-time coach and creating an opportunity for a full-time, or it sounds like Tucker, you kind of separate that too and look out for a full-time position for managers. But is there anyone who wants to jump in or have any questions further, for any of these guys, or to put out to the group? Okay.
I can kind of give you what we do. We have a similar process in internship, if you will, that then turns on to coach and training. And I do all of the internship portion. It's all education, theoretical, developing your lesson plans. It's kind of creating the perfect scenario before they do anything on the floor. And then once we get to the point of being on the floor, then they focus on just 1 or 2 parts of class at a time, and we don't move on until they've nailed that. But the first internship portion is solely with me. And then once they get to the point where they are on the floor, which typically depends on the person, but 2 to 3 months with me before they even step foot on the floor to do any sort of shadowing. Like, there's a lot of education that goes in first. But once they are on the floor, they then shadow and work with the rest of the team. So I get our entire staff bought in, and they become part of helping to build that next, I don't say next generation, but it takes a village. And it's one of my favorite parts of this process, because when you get the rest of your staff on board, then they step up even more to show that coach in training what it should look like at all times. It kind of keeps everyone on their toes, which I really love. And along the way, Matt, you had mentioned like books. We have specific books that are, it's not a suggestion, it is required. And if they aren't willing to do it, one of them actually starts before they're even allowed to intern. They have a book they must read, and I will not have a further conversation about it until it's read and we can discuss it. And it's all about being a team player. It has nothing to do with coaching. It's, are you going to be a good team player? Because you can be a fabulous coach, but if you're not a good teammate, then the rest of the team suffers. And so I will not bring someone on unless they're willing to work with the rest of the team. So that's really important for us. And that way there's some camaraderie amongst us. We have 11 people on staff. So it's very important that we all are on the same page and moving for the same mission. So that's really big for us.
So the culture piece is huge. We can teach people to coach. We can teach people the progressions. We can teach them how to write a lesson plan, but it doesn't work if you're an asshole and you don't want to talk to the members. And so that's been a huge piece for us. I saw somebody ask in the chat what the books were. The
first book is The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni. Anything by him, by the way, is fabulous. But The Ideal Team Player goes into understanding your core values and what it means to be on a team. And so we have a discussion about that. And the second one is called Culture Code.
And the Culture Code, we normally have them read a little bit later down the process. And it's normally once they're shadowing or once they're getting in a little bit more of the coaching aspect. And they can see how we've applied that in the gym for years, which is really beneficial.
Culture Code's one of my books for my staff too.
Yeah. Great book. Yeah.
So those are just the onboarding books. We have people read more things along the way, but those are the two that we have them read before they're on the floor and on the schedule.
Thanks, guys, for sharing. And I wanted to backtrack. This came up in last week's call with Josh Plosker, and it was really about deciding, and he put out this to everyone, deciding what role you want to be as a business owner. You know, you can't be everything. And, you know, for those of you who are on this call and you're like, whoa, 11 people for a staff, like I'm like a one man woman shop. You know, we may have been there at some point. And so I wanted to just go around too with like Hannah, John, Matt, and Tucker and be like, what was your vision? Because I think when you get caught up in the day-to-day things, you can kind of lose sight a little bit and get pulled in a lot of different directions. So I'm curious to see what your vision was when you went in day one to your business, and in respect to what role did you ultimately want to play? Did you want to be that coach coaching 15 hours, you know, indefinitely? Or did you see yourself being like, I want to create a staff and build this business? I think that's important to embrace. And if you're an owner on this call and you haven't really reflected back on that, it's just always good to reassess where you're at and where you want to be. So Hannah.
I knew from the beginning that I definitely wanted to create a staff and not be the only coach, for sure. At this point, I coach usually 4 classes a week, typically. So I knew that from the start, but I also knew for me, and this may be slightly different from others, but I knew for me, I was a single mom when I took over the gym, and I didn't want to miss anything with my kids. And so one of the big things was that I wanted to have flexibility, which can be a hard one to have when you first take over. But it actually trickled into my vision for some of my coaches. 5 out of 6 of my head coaches are military wives and moms. And so we kind of end up in the same boat a lot of times, a kid's sick or our spouse is deployed or whatever it is. And so that was a huge one for me, that I wanted to create positions for them that they could have good paying jobs that are not part-time, that are full-time if they want them to be, but have the flexibility for their kids as well. And I mean, we all want that, of course, but it gets tricky when you have kids and your spouse is deployed, So that was one that really started to come together as my team was building. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm surrounded by a bunch of other military spouses, not entirely, but the majority of my staff is. And I wanted to have that for them. I didn't want them to have to have another job or have to have another part-time job. I wanted them to be able to do what they loved.
Matt.
Yeah, so I made all mistakes in the book starting out, burned myself out coaching every class from morning to evening, and I was afraid to hire people, right? So I had income coming in, but I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to support a staff, right? So I did the whole thing. Hey, I'll trade you a membership if you coach 2 classes a week, and eventually, I could trade to half the gym so that they could coach. And it didn't really work out in my favor because I didn't really have people that were dedicated to being there. Once I realized that if I have somebody that I'm going to pay, even though I didn't think I could, they're going to produce for me if I take care of them, right? So to me, our environment is very big on making sure that I, number one, don't burn people out by having them coach 30 classes a week, right? Our full-timers coach 4 to 5 classes a week. That's it. All right. I have other things for them to do. But that said, we have enough of them so that if I'm taking good care of them and I get them in a position where I'm not going to burn them out and drag them into the ground, they're going to stick around. So they all make decent money. And we've been able to kind of give them KPIs so that they can grow and find the things that they need on a different level. If you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you're not familiar with that, look it up. It's how you should treat your employees. But when I started out, wasn't giving myself the base layers of that pyramid, right? And I wasn't reaching the things that I wanted to reach. By getting good people in the door, I was able to grow. And by me not being, stop being stubborn and thinking I could do it all by myself, I was able to grow by the influence of others. So making sure that our core mission was being met with the right people, but realizing that, sometimes you think you can't afford to hire somebody, but they open up more because now you're able to do more. Now you're able to bring more in. So like, there's been several times where I brought on a new full-timer. I'm like, shit, are we going to be able to afford to pay this person? Well, we give them KPIs to produce, and now they're able to go out and make that money come in. So they're benefiting, and so are we. So that maybe wasn't the best answer to that question, but it was a roundabout way.
No. And if anyone has follow-ups to Matt on this would be a good time to interject. I was going to ask, when was the pivotal moment where you were like, I need help, I need to change this up? Like, who helped you with that? Or,
Yeah. So I was a couple of years in when I decided to take on our first full-timer. And I was still not being mentored on my own. I was starting to read some books and things like that. So when you think about when you start out, you think, you're going to love coaching forever. But when you start to not like it, that's when you need to make that change. And when you start to, have some sort of resentment in business, that's when you want to be like, well, do I love this, or do I need to reframe and figure out who can I bring in to take away the things that I don't like to do? Because if you're not putting yourself in the right role for the right reasons, you're not going to succeed on that task. It's like, beating your head against the wall. Nobody likes to do that, right? If you don't love that particular thing, or if you start to, not like something that you used to love, then it's time to either find something to do it or walk away from it. But you need to do the same thing with your staff. If you say you wanted to start a CrossFit program for baseball players, and you take somebody who has absolutely zero interest in baseball and you say, you're going to coach this, that's not doing right by your business, and that's not doing right by your staff, because it's wrong person, wrong role, right? But if you find the right person that loves that may be more successful. It may turn their gears a little bit more. So, that turning point is going to be different for each one of you on this call. It may be tomorrow. It may be right from the get-go that you need to hire people. You need to make that transition. But I would highly suggest, if you do that, you have a plan of what you're going to do with them, because my mistake was my first full-timer. I didn't know what to do with them. I was like, well, you're going to coach. I'm like, cool. Well, what else are we going to do? Like, what are you going to do with those other hours? I can't have them coach 40 hours a week, because that's just going to kill them, right? That's not going to work for anybody, right? So we slowly figured out that there's other things I can have that person do to make them be fulfilled, but also fills their need for things that need to get off my plate.
Tucker?
Yeah. So, when I first opened my affiliate, like most of you probably, just like head over heels, like so excited. I left corporate America, sitting behind a desk, and I was out on the floor coaching, and I couldn't have been happier, to be totally honest. I did not enjoy just sitting behind the desk all day long. And so I was euphoric for the first few years. And it was a roller coaster ride. It was like, members were pouring in the gyms back like 2012, 2013. And I was just focused on growing the gym, growing the business, growing the bottom line. And the moment when I was like, wow, some things may need to change is, one, we were well over 250 members. I think revenue was like 55,000 a month. And it was just me full time. And I had a couple part-time coaches helping out. But yeah, for anyone who started their affiliate, I mean, the grind was real. Like, it was a very heavy workload. I laugh sometimes now when some of my managers are like, oh, workload's a little heavy. I was like, oh, you guys have no idea. But cranking along, and I was just so excited that it was just so fun for me. Honestly, it was just, I was euphoric, and I was like, let's go, let's do this. But once it grew that big, then also I got an opportunity to open my second gym, and that's where I kind of panicked. I was like, oh my goodness, can't open a second gym. This first gym can't run without me. And that's when I really kind of realized some things Matt was saying, like, hey, I've got to develop someone. I've got to bring them on. I've got to find out what their role is, how they're going to, not only replace me in the business, but also have a meaningful impact on the community, a positive impact, and other roles and responsibilities they can take on, as well as some things that maybe weren't my favorite things to do at the gym, offload some of those tasks. So that was really what pushed me kind of over the edge, was open that second gym. I was forced. One thing I found out very quickly was you cannot be in two places at the same time. And when I had one gym, I could always fix any problem that came up. But once there were two businesses, it was definitely a much greater reliance on staff and managers to run the day-to-day operations. And so, over the many years, I've learned, more and more about how to better manage staff, how to motivate them, how to properly set up the infrastructure so that ultimately our community of members is best supported in that process.
Thanks. John?
Yeah, just like the rest of these guys, it was a grind in the beginning. But when I started, I loved coaching, but I also loved business and being a business owner. And I knew that I wanted to get to a role where I could kind of sit in the office and figure out what the next play was to continue to grow the gym, or what it was needed. So I started with the idea that I wanted to have somebody on full time. I wanted to share the experience with somebody else. And it didn't happen right away, but similar to what Matt said, there's, voices inside, or you have feelings that you're not going to be able to afford it, and you're reluctant to hire that full-time coach. But really look at the numbers and say, okay, I think I can do this. And then, pull the trigger as long as the right things are in place, because that's going to open up time for you to go in there and continue to grow and then ultimately make more money. So, that was kind of how I hired my first full-timer. Was, we got to a point with the revenue where, I was comfortable with it. Was I sure if it was going to work? Not 100%. But I went forward with it and knew that, the grind and the free time that I would have, I would be able to grow the business even more. And I found that, every time I take on someone new and free up some of my time, I'm able to step back and work on things in the business that are going to push it forward even further. And that's every time that there's a growth moment in the gym is when something like that happens.
Yeah. I wanted to take a second. Does anyone on this call want to dig in with any questions? I mean, I'm going to keep doing a roundabout, but obviously this time is for you guys to find value or share. I was planning on digging into more of just what the pay and structure was like for staff, because I do know there's some variations with the setup across each of these owners. And of course, if you're comfortable with sharing, if you find at this point you're on this call and you're like, I'm having a really hard time or feel challenged with something that was brought up that you want to like ask them, please, if you feel comfortable, do that. But yeah,
I'd be curious about hearing more of like the structure of some of the internship programs. And kind of like, I guess it sounds like there's a variation in like length of time and how people are kind of approaching that with like training coaches. I guess I'd be interested in just hearing more about the kind of just the different spectrum of possibilities with that and what's worked, or especially anything you tried that didn't work as well. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Danielle, I'll take that. I don't think I fully finished outline our internship program. So I would say the longer, the better, right? The longer you spend training them is going to pay off for you. We have those monthly coach development sessions. Once we feel comfortable with them in that process, we then have them come and shadow coach our foundations program. And then they eventually start leading components of that. They'll start by leading the warm-up. Then they'll lead the warm-up and the conditioning. And the final component, they'd be leading the strength component. My head coach would be there monitoring, evaluating the whole time. And they eventually get to where they're leading our entire foundations course. So that's a 6-class course. And they normally cycle through that anywhere from like 3 to 6 cycles. So 2 weeks each one. Really depends on how well they're doing. Once they can coach an entire foundations course, which is your fundamentals, obviously, of the lifts we're doing, at that point, we then basically graduate them out of our internship program. They're no longer an intern. They're now a part-time coach, but they're still, they still have a limited role. So they can only then be secondary coaches in our larger classes. So they're going to start off as a secondary coach, still learning, developing, still being evaluated during that phase. Really, all of our coaches are evaluated forever, to be honest, but they get a lot more attention in terms of evaluations. And then eventually their final phase is they're going to actually be the lead coach on a smaller class. Once we get comfortable with that, they're lead coach on a larger class. So that whole window there from start to finish is honestly, it's probably 18 to 24 months from someone being an intern to like leading our biggest, most popular classes. And that range can vary. Some people probably done it in 12 months where they put in more time and have just demonstrated a higher ability to become a coach, a great coach quickly, and others just, takes a little longer in that process. But that's what it looks like. But ultimately, I would say slower is better. Invest in their knowledge and education, whether it's through working with you or your staff or your staff, but also, continuing education. All of our coaches, they all have to go get their level 1 on their own. But then typically within 6 to 9 months of them coaching for us, we pay for them to get their level 2, where they continue to just learn more. And so our entire staff, I'm proud when I tell, a prospect, oh, what kind of, certifications do your coaches have? Well, off the bat, they all have their level 2 CrossFit cert, and then have a lot more than that. But that's what ours looks like.
Does anyone on this call have a program where they have so many set hours in exchange for helping to financially support someone's level 1, or has tried that and have had success or not? Just curious.
I've done that in the past. If somebody is going to be, I'm lucky enough. I host level 1 and level 2 courses at my gym. So I'm lucky in that regard to have a place where it's at home. Right. So, sometimes if I have somebody that's in a pipeline that I'm like, maybe this person's going to work out, maybe not. I've done that in the past where I'm like, hey, if I give you a scholarship for this course, can you dedicate yourself to me to working for me here for X amount of time? So I'll drop a little contract. And what I don't do is say, oh, you're going to work it off until I can't pay, until it's paid off, right? So like maybe one of their classes this week goes towards that balance, and if they're doing more than one, the next one they're going to get paid for, because then it's almost like they're doing it for. There needs to be a little bit of give on that. I think it's just fair. So I've done that in the past. I don't like to do that, to be honest with you. I'd rather go down the other road of having somebody come in with it already. But sometimes you find the right person. And, example of that is I have a doctor who's a surgeon who she's all in, and like, she obviously doesn't, it's not a financial worry for her. So she went out, I was like, hey, you should get your level 1. She went out and got it. And now she is one of our bench coaches part-time. And to say that I have like a surgeon is pretty cool, So yeah, I've done that.
Hannah,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask Hannah what your process is like at the moment.
I've been lucky enough that most of mine already had level 1s and even level 2s when they came. But I have a young guy right now that I'm kind of making some changes for, specifically because I do see so much potential in him. And he actually, before this, we were in a meeting for about 2 hours. But we're kind of working through that beginning stages right now and figuring that out. He is a college student. So we made an agreement kind of the same way, as you're going to do X amount of hours leading up to this, since I'll be paying for the level 1 up front. So I've actually kind of had to change and adjust this per person. Because like I said, my staff has been actually pretty stable for almost 4 years, to be honest. So this is the first new guy in a while. So we've changed some things.
John, do you have any variations with your length of time, or do you treat anyone who has experience different from someone prior, like with your process? How does that vary, since we didn't really?
Yeah, so a little bit. So the intern process is the same. It all starts with the question of why do you want to coach, to make sure that, the person is in line with what we're looking for. And as we go forward, if it's someone that doesn't have their level 1 yet and everything seems to be lining up like they're going to be a good fit potentially in the future, I have no problem investing in that level 1 for that person, as long as they're in the internship program prior to. So if I see the potential that they're going to be able to help the business in the future, and, they have the potential to be a coach here, then I have no problem investing and sending them to their level 1. And it gives them a little bit of motivation to continue to learn as well. We have had a couple people that have had coaching experience before, and I've found that coaching experience is never what you think it is. So they go through the same internship process as everybody else, and they learn how we do things and what our expectations are. Maybe it's a little bit shorter with their rate of development if they've had exposure to some of these things before. But outside of that, it's not really any different than the normal internship mentorship program. And then as we go through that, something that we've recently implemented is just monthly check-ins to kind of chat with the person, see where they're at, see where we're at with their development, and make sure that they're still committed to it. Because the last thing that we want is somebody continuing in the internship program and, they're not really in it anymore mentally to continue to learn and become part of the staff. So at that point, it just opens up a potential conversation to, politely separate ways and go back to being a member or what it might be. But usually those check-ins are good on the aspect, because it keeps people motivated going forward. They hear what they've done well, they hear what they need to work on, and then we continue to push that program.
Now, when you say you have staff or check-ins, and this goes out to anyone on this call, how frequent do you have staff? What's your frequency for staff meetings? Do you do one-on-one meetings? What's that frequency like? And
so we do staff meetings once a month. We're actually doing a staff retreat because December is hard with the holidays. So instead of having the normal meeting on Saturday morning, we're going to go away for a weekend up to New Hampshire and kind of start to plan out 2024. Outside of that, one-on-one check-ins with coaches, that'll happen quarterly with staff people. But if you're in the internship, we check in with you, kind of a sit down once a month.
Oh, thanks. Tucker, I always see on your Instagram handle that you're doing a lot of team building things with your staff. Do you want to share any of those activities, or and also the frequency of your staff meetings?
Yeah, well, we like to have fun, so that's important. And so yeah, coming up, next thing we'll have is we have a big Christmas party every year. Staff gets to invite their significant other. And we go out and have steak and drink about 25 bottles of wine and have a great time. Normally 30, 35 people join for that. Each of the gyms has their own Christmas party there. But in terms of staff, kind of typically, it's hard to get my whole team of part-time coaches together. So the Christmas parties are a big event for that. But throughout the year, my group of managers and we like to do a quarterly team building event. So this summer, one day we went go-karting and out to dinner afterwards, like an indoor go-karting place. That was a ton of fun and somewhat competitive. CrossFitters like their sense of competitiveness even when having fun. And then we also, a couple months ago, September, we went paddle boarding just out on the Potomac River, and then went out to a really good steakhouse and got some good steaks. So we kind of mix it up on what we do. Really, it's
not what you eat.
We kind of brainstorm. Yeah, it's all we always have food involved in there. There's typically good steaks and a couple good bottles of wine involved. So that is good. But it is that's important that the team's having fun working. We meet weekly. The managers, we all meet in a weekly meeting. But I'm always brainstorming how we can even do better in terms of getting all the greater team, all my part-time coaches together as well. So certainly there's things we could do better in that sense, I think. But it's also tough when you have 20 people's different schedules you're trying to coordinate to do something. So there's some logistics challenges as well.
Matt, in terms of, have you had any success getting your part-time coaches together? Like, what does that look like? I know that's a challenge that's usually brought up when this topic comes up.
Yeah. So I think laying a solid foundation from the get-go, right? Don't hire somebody that's not going to be bought in. Make it clear when you hire somebody that these are the expectations. And if you're not willing to be a full participant, even as a part-timer, that you don't belong to in our group. And that's not to say that you're a bad person. That's just saying, if you can't commit to all the highest level as the same as the full-timers do, as far as the buy-in goes, and as far as the mission, vision, core values go, this probably isn't the place for you to coach. And I've had people wash out on that before, and that's okay. It's an honest conversation back and forth. You have to have those conversations with your staff to make sure that, there is buy-in, but also just because they're part-time, you have to also treat them the same. You have to give them the same level of attention and care that you do your full-timers. Maybe they don't need to know what your numbers look like every month, or your, maybe you don't have to have them on the key business metrics every month, but maybe you should check in on them and tell them they're doing a good job once in a while. And hey, I really liked how you did XYZ. Hey, you know what? Last time you coached the snatch, you missed this cue, and today you did awesome. So those are like good parts to get people buying in, because you have to don't forget about them. So lay the foundation, but then build the foundation. Right? Keep checking back with them on the basics.
And I just realized I was scrolling through the chat and I missed a lot of comments and questions here. But Matt, this one to you, when you speak of developing some of their roles, can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So there's a couple questions in the chat about this. So one of them, Carrie, you wrote, curious for those who gave full-timers only 4 classes a week. Maybe I use 4 classes a little liberally. It's more like 6 to 8 classes a week for the full-timers. So, I'll just be clear on that. What other projects and roles do you have them working on? And then underneath that says, does anyone have a call of a coach making 100,000 or more a year? I do. And how do you do that with a mix if they're only coaching a limited number of classes? Well, so if you're going to coach it, all of you should aspire to pay your coaches very well, right? Treat them well, they'll treat you well. You grow, they grow, you grow, right? That should be your mantra moving forward. If you find the right people, they'll do that for you. But if you're limiting the number of classes, you're gonna and giving them other things to do, that's going to be allow them to do other things that are going to be fulfilling to them, right? So what we do is, if we're limiting people to between that 6 to 8 classes a week, one of the good things that was already mentioned here was like meeting with their clients, right? So we set up every 3 months, all the full-timers, the entire totality of our membership gets set up and they're assigned a coach. Okay. So it's their responsibility to set up, and we have a system that does that very, very well and communicates with them. But we basically have a texting app that sets up, frequent text with those people when they interact back and forth with them. And then the other thing they do is they set up goal meetings, and these are paid things. These aren't things that I'm just going to have them do for no benefit to themselves. So if they do a 1 hour goal setting meeting, they get an hourly wage for that. I have somebody that runs my social media. They get an hourly wage for those hours. I have somebody that does our ordering of our inventory. They get an hourly wage for that. So there's all these different roles. There's a client success manager. There's a social media manager. There is, there's a lot of different roles, and that takes up things that I don't need to do anymore. As long as I can oversee and they have KPIs for each one of these positions and shows that they're doing well, they can have those things. The other things that on top of that we allow them to do is create. Okay. So again, I'll refer to Maslow's hierarchy of needs again. If you have a coach that only does what you tell them to do, they're only going to go so far, right? But if you create an environment that allows them to fulfill their higher level needs, whether that be self-fulfillment and things that they're passionate about, you're going to win and they're going to win. So here's an example. I have a coach that absolutely loves working with soccer players. Okay. So what does he do? He has a soccer program for kids that are doing soccer. Now, do we call it CrossFit? Sure. We're a CrossFit gym, but it doesn't mean that's the only thing we can do. We can use CrossFit to help train these kids to get better at soccer. It's GPP, right? Kids should be doing GPP. So he's made it his goal to have a very successful soccer program. Well, I don't just pay him by the hour on that. Whatever he generates for revenue, we share that. Okay. So if he makes it, we basically start having the conversation with saying, how much do you want to make on this? And then we price it accordingly. And I take some, he takes some. It's my equipment. It's my lights. It's my marketing. So we provide all layers of assistance so that it's successful, whether that be me coaching him through the process or providing resources for him, or using my social media or my platforms and my audience so that he can be successful. So now he has a program that he's created that's doing successful and puts money in his pocket. All of our coaches, part-time, full-time, they all have the opportunity to do that, right? And now coming off the street, they're not going to know how to do it. You have to build that, and you have to instill the confidence in them, the education, and you have to invest in them so that they will do this for you. But I have coaches that make 6 figures because we do this, right? That's the bulk of what they're doing outside. Small group training, personal training, nutrition. Those are things that I didn't create all those programs in my gym myself. I found the right people that fit those roles and rewarded them for doing the work. And I was honest with them about what I was going to do. And I'm honest with them about sharing and what they're going to make out of it. But they tell me what they're going to make. I help them price it, and we get it out there to everybody. That's the biggest way that people make money in our gym: personal training, small group, and specialty programs, projects. We have corporate wellness programs. We have nutrition. We do team building activities like challenges. So there's the things. And then the question I just think that just popped up is, are the admin hours that your coaches work paid the same as their coaching hours? I do. I pay their admin hours the same as their coaching hours, because that's a value task, right? So if you look at what each thing is valued at, like, you probably don't value sweeping the floors as much as you do like having somebody do your books for you, right? The person who's doing the books is probably a little more involved than the person that's sweeping your floors. So that's a separator. That's where I would have a different rate for somebody that's going to sweep the floors. They're probably not get the coaching rate for sweeping the floors. So yeah, that's a good question.
Hannah, I recall you doing something with and sorry if I'm saying this incorrectly, but it was with a revenue share with coaches, or you were doing some sort of process with them with your membership, similar to what Matt had suggested. But could you speak to that?
Yeah. So when I took on or started the mentorship with Mad Lab, that is their methodology. So one of the things we do is the head coaches, they all get a percentage of the membership of the member that is theirs. So each one of us has a team, and that team, you get a percentage of those memberships. How it's structured is basically, as a person comes in, they become yours if you're set up with an intro with them, or maybe they just walk in the door, you happen to get lucky, or there's referral bases as well where you get an extra percentage or a higher percentage. But each one of those members are yours forever. You will do we call it continuing education at the gym, but it's every 12 weeks. We do a session with them where it's a personal training session or nutrition or, whatever the client wants that time to be. It is basically goal setting and making sure we're accomplishing the things we'd already set out to accomplish, and then making sure we're setting our goals for the next 12 weeks ahead of us.
Did you find, and I don't know if you have a firm grasp on this number, and this is to any one of you, Matt and Hannah, that your retention rate improved or your churn went down when you started having more a follow-up process? And not that I'm advocating to do this is just perspective, but I think that first 90 days is essential for your member. And so whatever system you have, this is great to hear. But
yeah, for us, it was a massive game changer. I mean, it was a huge change for us. We are right next to Belvoir, so we already have 90% of our membership is military anyways, and so they're constantly moving or leaving, PCSing or deploying. But we still found it to be a huge change. The bond that the coaches are making in the initial personal training sessions prior to joining classes has already kind of knit them into a bond. And then each team, has their own things that they do, whether it's Friday night, first Fridays of the month, they go to a brewery or something like that, to build that little community inside of our bigger community. So it was a game changer for us.
I had some other questions come in. I want to be respectful of everyone's times. It is at 3:00. So if you're on this call and you need to leave, please, it was a pleasure having you on it. I'll also have a recording up. For those of you who want to stay on and continue to chat, and Hannah, Tucker, John, Matt, if you have to go, but if it's for a couple minutes, Carrie had a couple questions following up, Hannah, about paying your coaches based on revenue. But if you're able to stay on, I'm also here too, if you want to connect for the next half hour. So yeah. So appreciate
I gotta take off, Danielle. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Yeah. Hannah, if you could, Carrie was curious about, for those that are paying coaches based on revenue, how do you establish that? And do you pay based on the retention of members? And when a member leaves or quit, how does that impact the coach's pay?
Yeah. So what we do is, for each coach, they all started at there's 3 levels of coaches, and those percentages change as you move up. That all depends on how many people you have onboarded into the gym. So when everyone started, we all started at the bottom level, and I did it with the coaches too, even though I don't coach as many classes. I did it with them to make sure they, saw that I'm right there with them. I'm in the trenches, and, until I could get out of the trenches, that's what we did. So, but we all started at the lower percentages, and then as they onboard a certain amount of members, they will then move up in percentage. Anytime they lose a member, then yes, their pay the next month will go down. We're lucky enough that we're constantly onboarding new people. So what I am finding with my head coaches right now which is why we just hired someone new or working with someone new, they are all at this point have teams as big as they want to have. They are working as many hours as they want to have, and they are all super happy with where they're at. You know, that's the conversation we have on a constant basis of just keeping it real between us. You know, is this how many hours you want to be working? Is this how much you want to be making? Are you happy? Are you burnt out? All those questions that you guys have all been talking about. So, you know, we just keep that very, very real and make sure we have our goals. Some coaches have different goals than others. Some want to be more around 20 hours a week. Some want to be 35, 40 hours a week. And so we just make that work between the team. But yes, so if someone does quit or leave, it is off of their paycheck, which I have found to be a very positive thing, because what we find here is, you know, oh, hey, I'm going on travel for 2 months. Cool. Well, what we're going to do is I'm going to write this program for you, or I'm going to do this while you're gone. We're going to work on nutrition while you're gone, whatever it is, to keep them as a regular member so that none of that's disrupted while they're gone.
And anyone on this call, Hannah, you had mentioned that you're fortunate to get have members coming in your door, knocking on your door. Where are your leads coming from? Like, are you able to distinguish, like, website, social media?
Honestly, it's just Google. It's mostly Google. Yeah.
And have you done any digital marketing, or is it? Yep. Okay. Matt, Tucker, do you guys want to chime in?
Yeah, the majority of ours are organic as well. When I see our leads slowing down a little bit, I will sometimes run an ad, or it's a lot easier to just boost a post. So I will occasionally do that, just to kind of get awareness out to the greater community in our area. But I'm not an expert, and I don't spend much time or money doing that. I'm sure there's some people on this call that can do social media marketing, ad spend extremely well. So I'd kick it over to them. I think the biggest thing I learned was, you know, location. That's what they say about real estate. And I opened my gyms in areas that are very high density with a lot of opportunity, a lot of people around it. So that's kind of paid off for me in terms of just paying a higher rent to be in a good location.
And for those of you, there was a call. It was actually the head of our product team at HQ. She has a lot of experience in advertising for Facebook, and it's called Ignite Your Gym Growth. The recording's up on our Linktree in bio. And so we go down a rabbit hole talking about digital marketing, and I thought it was really informative. So I would check that out as well to follow up. There was also a call recently. Any calls that are recorded, I do my best to put them up in the Linktree, but there was also one about coaching evaluations. So you want to, if you're interested in that, I think Dr. Barry, that's what I have on your, check that out. But yeah, well, guys, thank you for your time. I am here if you want to connect one-on-one. No, it's sometimes a awkward forum to speak comfortably, like in front of a large group, but please, like, hit me up. My email's up on the Instagram handle. If you're not an owner and receiving emails from me, I'm happy to jump on a call with you. And yeah, thank you very much. Bye, guys. Have a good day.
Thanks, Danielle. Bye.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thank you.